Welcome to another Founder Wisdom Pod coaching edition with David Pennington. With us today, he's founder and CEO at Penn Consulting and Coaching. He coaches small to mid-sized engineering and tech firms to create internal systems to hire, develop, and retain highly productive employees. This podcast is brought to you by my podcasting company, that is podpire.com. If you want to start, scale, be invited to podcast and monetize podcasting, I can help you do that. Just go to podpire.com. Dave, welcome to the pod. Tell me a bit more about yourself and tell me a bit more about Penn Coaching and Consulting.
I've been in kind of leadership for 35 plus years, so I've kind of done a lot of different things through the years. Some in education, do some adjunct teaching, that kind of thing. But really, I have a heart for entrepreneurs and particularly leaders, managers, people that have a company, trying to grow their company, scale their company, and they're looking for good people. I think that's become more and more of a challenge today to find good people and then develop them and retain them. That sounds pretty easy on the surface, but there are some challenges involved. And I think sometimes people just need a little support and help and guidance in that.
Right. Why did you decided to jump to the entrepreneurial world instead of pursuing a career?
Well, I've kind of done the career thing, and I'm at a stage where I'm really wanting to kind of take all of my experiences and expertise, and then invest it in future leaders. And I really enjoy the whole leadership space. That's really where I've been working for the last almost 8 years. And I've just decided to kind of narrow it and kind of focus, instead of having a very broad deliverable, to kind of focus more in the personnel area, because I think that's a real need in our day. And it's also one that is challenging. And for me, I've done well in that space through the years. I've been able to hire good people, develop those people, retain them for multiple years. And so I think that's an area that, I can share with others that can help them make their life a little easier and their company a little more profitable.
Because you first were a pastor and then you went into fresh experts. Tell us a bit more about that.
Well, my background is kind of twofold, threefold now, really. Pastoral was kind of my foundational where I spent most of my world. Um, Done a lot, pretty much anything in that space I've done, startups all the way up to sizable organizations where I was administrative in my roles and responsibilities. So lots of scope, lots of responsibility. Same thing in private education. I think I've been a principal, or what you might call a head of school, in 5 different schools. Been an executive director in a state organization with 37 schools in it, and then on president of the organization on a national board. So lots of experience in the whole private education space. And then the last 8 years, I've been more in the business sector. And really, you think about it, leadership is kind of leadership, whether you're nonprofit or for profit. There are certain skill sets that you need to develop and you need to get good at if you're going to be a leader in either world. And I just found there were a lot of crossover and a lot of parallels that I could help either nonprofit or for-profit organizations or companies to be able to grow and scale.
How's the coaching different from owning a business? Because you still manage your own business, obviously, but how does your character and daily habits change as a coach?
As a coach, I think you're investing in other people, but obviously you have to have your own world sort of organized and working well. I'm a firm believer. I don't try to do everything. I always say everybody's good at something, no one's good at everything. So kind of learn what you're good at and make that about 80% of what you do. And then you want to hire people who complement you. In other words, they have strengths in areas where you're not as strong, and you round out the team so that everybody has a role, but everyone is kind of playing at his or her strength in the role that he's been given or she's been given. And I find that works really well. And then what it does for me as a leader, it keeps me from overextending myself, and also from doing stuff that just, I can do it, I can learn to do it, but it just sort of drains me. So I try to stay in areas of I'll call it my strengths, super strengths, where I really just focus there primarily, and then I get support from others in the areas that need to be done, but I'm not the one necessarily that needs to do it.
Right. And your clients, who do you target? How do you target them? How do you get in touch with them?
You know, I've had clients in a lot of different spaces because I've been more in the past, more of in a general leadership role. I'm kind of narrowing it right now to more kind of tech, the tech world and engineering world. Um, and and rather than having sort of a general deliverables, I'm really focusing on personnel, which is, I think, a real needy area. But I get them through referrals. You know, I do some marketing. I have a blog that I write. I do some little videos that sort of do some teaching and instructional things that can be helpful to leaders. Have some leadership statements. Have a number of recommendations that I use. I've done webinars. So pretty much most of the things out there I've done, podcasts, obviously. So those are different ways that I connect with people.
And how much do you charge for your programs? How long do they last? And what kind of impact do you have on these clients?
Well, you know, it varies. Typically, most people initially engage for 6 months because that's a time frame in which we can get a lot done, but it also doesn't lock them in on a long-term basis. And then if the 6 months goes well, they often re-engage for longer. I've had clients for years, several years. So it just depends on what their needs are. Typically, I have kind of two different avenues, if you would, kind of a group approach where there's training and then coaching in a group segment. That starts at about 18K for the 6 months. And then if you want it in private, basically everything just doubles. So 36K. If you just want to, you want just own your own thing, do your own thing, not being involved in the group. And then often from there, what happens is other things get exposed or disclosed, and there are other needs. And once you help someone in one area, it gives you opportunity to actually speak into their lives or their organizations or companies in other areas. So sometimes it'll extend beyond that because they've gotten a lot of results. I'll just give you a couple examples. Some of them are simple. For example, I had a tech guy. He owned his own computer service company, half dozen employees or so. And I started talking with him and I said, well, tell me a little bit about your company. What do you do? And, and how's it going? And I said, for example, you kind of have business development or sales and you have operations. Which one are you? Now, he was the owner of the company. He says, I'm sales without any question. And he went on to tell me that if he gets before people, that he closes like 80% of everybody he talks to. So I said, wow, 80% close ratio. I'm impressed. That's pretty decent. I said, what about the operational side? He said, nah, not my thing. I hate it, So I said, all right, be honest with me right now in your life. I said, what amount of time, energy, and focus are you giving to sales versus operational? Now, honestly, I expected him to tell me he was almost sales. But what he told me was that he was 85% operational and 15% sales. And I said, wow. I said, you kill it in sales, but you're only doing 15% and you hate operational and you're doing 85%. And so I just paused. I said, well, how's that working for you? Literally his head drops. He says, it's not. He said, I hate my life. It's just every day I dread it. It's just horrible. All the stuff I've got to do and whatever. I said, well, what would happen if we could find someone who could actually run the organization, who could do your operational, not 100%, but let's say 80%. We got you out of operations almost entirely, got you back into sales. What would that do for your company? He paused. He said, if I did that, he said, I'd probably double my company in 18 months. Long story made short, that's exactly what happened. He found someone to run the operation about 80%. He still had to be involved 20% as the owner, which is doable. He got back into sales. He got into some government contracts, and literally his company just took off. And so sometimes I find with owners, and I don't know if you thought about this, but most entrepreneurs are what I call coach players. I don't know if you played any sports when you were growing up, but I'll just take baseball. Let's say you're the shortstop on the team. So as a player, you're playing that position as shortstop. But while you're playing that position as shortstop, you're also coaching the whole team. Now that can be done, but it's really hard to do. Most business owners are coach players. They play a particular role within the company, a significant role within the company, and they're managing or coaching the entire company simultaneously. And that's very challenging to do. And so as a result of that, they're just exhausted. They're extended. So what I try to do is get them what I would call well-aligned. The way I usually word it is I want to get them to insert themselves in their company where they get the highest ROI for the investment of who they are, their skill set, their aptitudes, all that kind of thing. And then from there, we want to build a team around them, a complementary team that can support them and function in a high capacity within that role. If we can do those two things alone, it's really a game changer for most companies. It reduces the load of the owner, the stress, and the whole company just begins to take off.
Right. I'd call these folks captains, they play, but they also coach the team. Captains, in hockey.
Right. Well,
COOs.
I mean, truly just beyond being a captain, because sometimes you can be a captain and play a role, but the coach, if you think about it, the coach has to think offense, defense, has to think the big picture. The player just thinks about the role that he plays.
Right.
And those two can kind of conflict and combat each other because it's hard to be both individuals at the same time. But yet that's what most business owners are doing.
Right. And okay, so how can I find a great COO, a great integrator? I've tried before, failed probably 5 to 10 times. Never could find a fit, and ideally I'd like to attach their compensations directly on their performance and zero salaries, but that I think defeats the whole purpose. First, what do you think about that payment model? And second, how can I be successful as a visionary having my EOS integrator around?
Okay. Well, first I would say start with you. And the reason I say that is because you have strengths and you're really good at certain things. Now, what you're telling me without saying it, it's implied is the support person, the organizational person, that's not your thing. Okay. You're more the creative, the gifted, kind of person. If that's true, and that's really what you need to determine, you want to put yourself in the role where you bring the highest ROI to your company first. Then you start looking for, all right, who do I need on my team that will really be able to allow us to surge forward as a company? Maybe it is the CEO or the COO or whatever. Once you determine that, then the next thing to do is you really need to get clarity about what that person's skill set, background, training, and I always encourage you to actually put a written job description together. Now, a lot of people don't like to do that, but it's really, really key in marketing to get the right person. It's also key in you getting clarity about what kind of person you need in that role. It does include skill sets and things like that, but it also includes company culture, fit, with you, because that's going to be such a key person. It needs to be someone that you gel with, that you are comfortable with, that you're similar in terms of just how you view, growth and development and all of that. So sort of philosophically close. And here's what happens. And I share all that because most of the time what happens is when people hire, they have an idea of what they're looking for, but it's not always really clear, crystal clear. So they find someone that sort of fits, but not really fits. And then they hire them because they like them. And they really wind up adjusting the job to fit the person rather than finding the person to fit the job that they need. And if you do that, your success rate will go way up if you just reverse that, where you're really looking at saying, okay, I need to make sure I'm clear on who I'm going after and all the intricacies of that. And I need to make sure I don't compromise. I don't settle for something that's not what I want. Because if you do, you're probably not going to be happy, and once you settle that and you really go for the right person, then it's just a matter of really zoning in, looking for that person, hunting for that person until you find that person. Of course, there are organizations that can help you with that.
What other challenges do you see in businesses other than having COO that can integrate your vision and make it happen? What other challenges do you see the business leaders face that you help with your coaching?
Well, I think another thing is, finding the right person is challenging. Okay, that's first. Onboarding that person well is really also challenging. Most companies don't have much of an onboarding process. It's kind of like, okay, there's your role, there's your cubicle, there's your computer, there's your whatever. And people come in and what they're trying to do, they know what you hired them to do in general, but they don't understand your organization well enough to know what they need to do to be successful in that role. What are the 3 to 5 really major objectives that they need to make sure they do well if they're going to be successful? I think onboarding them so they have clarity up front is really, really key. Because what happens is people are searching for what to do, but sometimes it may take them 6 months, 12 months, 18 months to really figure out the whole flow of things and how it all works. So you can expedite their productivity a great deal by onboarding them well. The third thing is, I think, developing them. Often when we hire people, we sort of assume that they're going to automatically develop themselves. There are a few people that will do that. Most people need guidance. They need support. They need maybe some additional training or whatever. And as the owner, what you need to do is be concerned about not just getting the right people, not just onboarding them well, but actually developing them, helping them to rise to their highest capacity so they can contribute at the highest level. And that's really kind of on you as the owner. We can't just assume that's going to happen. We have to actually work at making it happen. And then last of all, I think a real key is retaining people. A lot of times people think that people leave jobs because of money. Money is not usually the main reason they leave. They leave because they don't feel valued. They don't feel appreciated. There's not potential for growth and development. And what happens is, and maybe poor management would be the last one. There's not good management over them. And so they get an offer. And I always word it this way, good people can go somewhere else easily. The people that can't go somewhere else are the ones that will stick with you because they know they can't go somewhere else and get a job that's comparable to the one they currently have. But if they're not growing and developing and really, feeling like you're investing in them and you value them, then they become almost, it's weight that you carry as an organization that's not always productive. So a lot of this is really leadership. We tend to look for, I'll call it the silver bullet, the pixie dust. We're looking for a quick fix. There's not really too many quick fixes in management and leadership. You've got to work at it. And as an owner, you've got to own this and really make sure you get the right people on your team and you're working at developing them and helping them become productive.
Right. And in terms of your coaching practice, what are your goals for 2024? Where do you want to take it?
Well, what I've done, this is something I've done recently. I've kind of narrowed from general leadership coaching to more specifically this personnel area. So I'm kind of rebranding currently in that, and then obviously trying to make sure I have my messaging clear so it resonates with people that I'm reaching out to. And I'm more specifically starting with kind of the tech area, if you want to say it that, because often, if you think about it, tech people they're good at tech. They're not as good at people. And sometimes they tend to want to, they grow fast and they're looking for okay, who should I hire next and what order should be here and what person should I need? It's not always a blanket statement because I always key off of the leader. Because if I can get you understanding your strengths and get you inserted in your company to bring the highest ROI, then that tells me how to help build around you that complementary team I talked about before. And it's not always the same with every leader because some leaders are more, executional. Some leaders are more visionary. So I have to understand the leader to even help you know how to build your company and how to build the personnel on your company. So that's really what I'm doing. I don't need a lot of clients. Typically, I'm looking for 20 to 25 clients a year max. And I do that because, number one, I don't need tons of income. I've managed teams and organizations and grown things in the past. I'm really wanting to keep this more as a boutique kind of company where I invest deeply into the lives of leaders and help them become stronger, better, build strong companies, more profitable companies. So that's really my goal for next year, is just to have that 2025, I would call ideal clients that really want to grow, really want to scale, and really want to develop.
Love it. And last but not least, tell us about some challenges that you faced in your career as an entrepreneur so far, and how you've resolved them with some tools and mental models that you have.
I think the biggest challenge as an entrepreneur is learning what you're good at and limiting yourself to primarily working in that space, and then finding good people who can help you move things forward. I always say it this way, you know what? I'm not good at everything. And I've decided I'm not going to try to be good at everything. I'm going to settle in the areas that work naturally for me, and then I'm going to find people to support me. So I have VAs that support me in areas. If you think about it, you have marketing, you have sales, you have the deliverables, you have all the operational stuff, finances, and all that kind of thing. So there's 4 or 5 different areas with any entrepreneurial endeavor. And most of us are not going to be good at all of those. So select the ones you're good at, focus your time in doing that, and then find people who can support you, help you in those other areas where you're not overwhelming yourself and overextending yourself.
Love that, David. Where can people find out more about you?
Probably the easiest place is just my website, which is coaching.com. And there's lots of things. I have a resource section there, which has some videos, which have some ebooks you can download. There's a wide range of stuff there, and you can learn a little bit about my whole approach toward coaching and how it all works. So Penn Coaching, PENN coaching.com.
And that was another founder, wisdompodcast.com. If you need help with your podcast, you can go to podbar.com. That was David Pennington and Charles Cormier.